What has happened in Post Shifters? Welcome back to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. Today, we're doing something completely different. I haven't actually had a lot of people in the hotel and accommodation sector on my show. It's just something, it's funny enough because I do run Clive's, and Clive's is part of a hotel. And so the hotel and the accommodation sector definitely affects my business at Clive's for sure, because our occupancy is through the floor with regional lockdowns and whatnot. But we're talking to Will Slickers from Slicktalk Media. He has a fantastic podcast talking about all things hotel, accommodation, and hospitality. He's also Recreation Rentals co-founder and destination director, which sounds like a hell of a title as well. I was actually on Will's podcast a number of months ago, and I had such a great time. We've just sort of kept connecting and talking. He just got, we're going to probably talk about it, but he just got named top 50 most influential people in hospitality industry in North America or the world, which is insane because he's quite a young dude. And so yeah, we're going to dig into it because he is based in the US, and I feel like the US was behind Canada all the way through COVID, in the way of lockdowns and all that sort of stuff, and now it's coming back. So I'm really looking forward to sort of chatting to him about what's the forecast for hotels and accommodation going forward, because especially for a big, and he's going to use this word, destinationaire, which is always hard for me to like put into my mouthful. Destinationaire locations like Victoria, Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal. How is that going to be affected long term post-COVID? And so, welcome, Will.
Thanks for having me, Shawn. It's always great to see you. I'm a big fan of your show ever since we connected on mine, and yeah, I'm excited to be here and do this episode with you.
Thanks, buddy. You've been pretty prolific in the last like 6 to 12 months. It feels like maybe it's just me because I've sort of gone into your circle, but you've gone from like 0 to 60 in the last 12 months. It feels like you've gone from like just grinding away to all of a sudden being a prolific like commentator on accommodation, Airbnb, hotels, short-term rentals, and stuff like that. How did you get your start? Like, where did this all come from?
I can tell you it hasn't been the last 12 months. It's been a work of progress for like 3 years. The podcast really started 3 years ago in 2018, and that's where really just like my love and passion for hospitality was able to be poured into. So trust me, it hasn't been just like the short like overnight success story. But it's been really cool and it's been a fun journey. But I don't know if you want me to start from the beginning or you want.
Yeah, I'm curious how you got into this space. Because you have got a fun origin story, so I'm curious about how you got into the space and how you sort of started grinding out into this area.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of like, I'll try to do long story short. I got into entrepreneurship after experiencing working for Harley Davidson as their event coordinator and marketing manager. I got to experience kind of like that hospitality feel. You put an event together, you get to promote it, do some marketing, do all this stuff. And I was like, I really like this. And I moved to the other side of Washington State and started a chauffeur and event company before Uber really kind of became popular in that city. And I didn't even really know about Uber, to be honest. I was like, this just sounds fun. Like I had this car that I was paying monthly payments on. So I was like, why not like dress up in a suit and tie and get this going? Well, I did that. And then Uber did come in and just destroy. I had no idea how to keep up. I had too much overhead, had contractors and all this other stuff. And I was, I think, 19, 20 years old. No idea how to run this. I was like, I'm done. Like it's the year I opened it, is the day I closed it on the same day. And I remember picking up these guests at this 4-diamond autograph collection Marriott hotel. And I just remember that ambiance in the lobby. It was beautiful. Like Autograph Collection is a unique soft brand of Marriott. There's only about, I think at the time, there was only 94 in the world under that soft brand. And now there's like 100 and something. But it means that they're a very unique, special, specific type property. There's none like it in their collection. And this one was really nice, really grand. And I remember that ambiance. I was like, I'm going to go apply there. My best friend was like, dude, why would you do that? You never worked in a hotel in your life, especially at that like scale. It was 716 rooms.
Oh,
he was like, he was discouraging me. He was like, you just go work at the car wash for $15 an hour. I was like, no, I'm not going to go work at a car. Like, dude, I was like, that was a big step back for me. I was like, nothing against car washes, but for my personal, like, I tasted entrepreneurship. I tasted it. I was like, oh, yeah. So long story short, I walked in, applied for the job, got interviewed on the spot and hired on the spot because my manager said, he's like, how are you with people? So I love people. And he's like, how are you with like software and technology and stuff? I was like, I could be taught that. I'm no experience. I'm going to be honest. And he's like, great. Because if you said the other way around, say, I'm not very good with people, but I'm great with the systems. You're like, yeah, sorry, no job for you. So that was like the entry point where I just really got to experience hospitality, hotels. And I found like for my whole life, I never knew what I wanted to do. Never. I never had like one moment it was a firefighter, the next it was a counselor, the next it was a pastor, the next it was a, whatever. And I just never had that moment where I knew what I wanted. And then working at that hotel solidified everything for me from there.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what year was that? Not to age you.
I started the show in 2018. So I think that was shortly like 2015 because I worked there for about 2 years.
So how did you deep dive? Because you're incredible. Like I've been in clubhouses with you, which it's just intense in Clubhouse nowadays because there's so many people. Like 4 or 5 months ago, it was like, but now you just flick through. It's like the old school. Everybody's like, "What's Clubhouse?" I'm like, "Well, it's like AOL. It's like AOL chat rooms that you would have been typing back in the day, but now it's gone to that far where you're just scrolling through chat room after chat room after chat room after chat room." But I've listened to you on it, and your knowledge and depth of the hotel industry and the short-term rental market is incredible. And so, how did you sort of deep dive into something that you'd never done before? And then really started really understanding and focusing down the direction you wanted to take in your career.
Yeah. To be honest, I became obsessed. Like it was like, I couldn't go out to the bars or to like a family function without talking about the hotel or like Marriott or like anything in general. And I just became obsessed. And, at that first hotel, I showed up 2 hours early to every shift. I worked late after every shift. I covered different departments. I learned from as much as I could, and I became really connected with my guests. Like that was my first, like, I just was excited to see Mr. and Mrs. Chardine or Mr. Rhodes come in for like their weekly business trips, or like, just that it was just like, it became something that just, I don't know how to describe it. It was just an obsession really. And that I got mentored and I got a little bit of education. And once I moved to the Oregon coast, I actually became a manager pretty much right off the bat from becoming a front desk agent to a manager at this hotel. And that's where it was just like a sponge. You're absorbing everything. I absorbed every LinkedIn article, every influential person in the space, every CEO of every big brand and whatnot. And I dove into what is ADR, what's RevPAR, how do you tell what profitability is, what's your cost per room, how do I run like a functional schedule with my front desk. And like I just brought it all in. I just tried to absorb as much as possible. And the podcast was created in 2018 as a source of, I couldn't find any, like there's Hospitality Mavericks, who we know. There was fuel marketing, hotel marketing, and like Glenn Hausman's I forget what his show is called, No Vacancy. And I was like, really nothing for someone my age. I was 21, 22. So 2018. No, I was 23-ish. Yeah, 3 years ago. So there was anything for people my age with little, like I didn't have executive experience. I didn't have, college degree and all this other stuff. Like, there was nothing for us. For the hotel industry and the hospitality industry is so unique and special. I just feel like it wasn't talked about a lot. Like when you're in high school thinking about what you want to do, no one tells you to go work at a hotel because you can find a passion in accounting, security, food and beverage, all these like events, and there's all these different like industries that you can get into from one spot. And so I just used the podcast as a way that Tony Robbins and Gary Vee were like, hey, idiot, get a $20 mic off of Amazon, go to anchor.fm. And like, I saw that video. I was like, sweet, I'll do a podcast. And that became like my source of creativity and helped with that spark of entrepreneurship that I had from my previous adventure. And yeah, it just became, like I said, an obsession. I just couldn't get over it.
So where did the crossover happen? Like, obviously you're in a fantastic corporate job. You're going through the chain. You could have easily just stayed at the hotel and become a general manager, or moved on to look after a couple of hotels. What was the driving force? Obviously you have an entrepreneurial spirit. What was the driving force to go from a fantastic corporate job that you were enjoying any as well, to being like, you know what, I need to go out on my own. I need to risk it all and go out on my own.
Well, for when I started at that first hotel, my parents had an extra apartment above their garage, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, and the long-term rental tenants that they were getting just weren't working out. They would either damage the place or just there's a lot of weird stuff that just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth the monthly revenue they were getting from it. And so they heard about Airbnb and they're like, "Hey, we're going to put it on Airbnb. Can you help us?" And I was like, hell yeah, because it's a 1-room hotel. Basically, all it was. You just take away the front desk in a restaurant, and like obviously no valet, but you take that whole concept of check-ins at 3, check-outs at 11. You have all this other stuff, right? You create a standard. You have white linen, great bathroom amenities, coffee. You do that, all that stuff, right? And it ended up making them a really good amount of money compared to their monthly rental tenant income. So like $1,800 a month versus $3,500. I think the $3,500, yeah, you have a little bit more turnover costs to clean after guests, but that's usually covered by a cleaning fee. So long story short, they're earning a lot more money. I was having a lot of fun with that, taking my hotel knowledge, bringing it into their short-term rental. And at the time when I was at hotel manager doing the podcast was getting really busy to the point where I was struggling to do my normal hotel management job to then also do the podcast, because I had crazy amount of guest inquiries, listenerships were skyrocketing. I had sponsors that were coming on board, and I was outweighing my monthly income from sponsorships. And I was like, oof, this is getting all good. And I remember the day because it was September, I think 10th, and I was spending a lot of money on just like going out and drinking or eating like takeout food all the time and all this other stuff. And I just remember I was like, you know what? I can probably say I made the biggest mistake of my life if I don't take this opportunity to like see that this has grown. This side project, this passion project that really wasn't intended to become a business. That opportunity is right there. And if I don't chase that, I'll probably regret it my whole life. And so finally, I just on that day I said I'm done. I stopped going out every night. I stopped, and when I say going out, I mean like going out to eat and do all these activities that costed money that I didn't need to spend. And I just started being frugal. I cut out all my subscription payments on like things I just didn't need, other than car insurance, rent, food, phone bill, basics. And yeah, I remember I was like, I'm going to save up this much money by this time. And I exceeded that amount in a faster amount of time. And I gave my 3 weeks notice to the hotel as I saw that sponsors were paying, like the sponsorship was coming in really good. And December 27th, 2019 was my last day as a hotel manager. And little did I know the world was going to burn and crash like 3 months later. But it's still the best decision in my life. I couldn't, because at that point, I think the concept of I'm just learning. I'm using the podcast to learn. It became, I've learned so much through my guests. I've learned so much through my audience that it became the point where like, okay, I actually know something and I'm doing it. And I had a previous vacation rental company, sold my shares to in November. And now we have this new one called Recreation Rentals, but just being able to do it as well. It's kind of like a long answer to your question, but being able to.
I'm down for long answers. Long answers are good. Okay. I always say like entrepreneurship, obviously entrepreneurship is sexy these days. Like everybody wants to be their own boss and stuff like that. I always double down and say that hospitality entrepreneurship is
rough,
almost twice as hard. It's such a long tail ROI when it comes to hospitality entrepreneurship. Like it's not like tech. It's not like we're investing in tech and in 2 years someone's going to buy it for a couple of $1 million and we'll walk away and be happy. Like it's such a long tail ROI on the business. How do you balance it off? Like obviously sponsorship for the podcast, stuff like that. How do you balance off that sort of like grind and always sort of trying to remind you, because obviously you're also a lot younger than I am, but like that drive and that need for, I suppose, finality when you set yourself a goal. I was talking to a friend last night and he's like, well, what's your end game? I'm like, I don't really have an end game. Like I'm really enjoying the process. And I find making 3 to 6 month goals can really just like actually in hospitality anyway, can like actually cloud a lot of the things that you really want to do. So as a hospitality entrepreneur, how do you deal with that that heavy grind, that heavy sort of like hustle all the time?
It's not easy. Like, I was actually on a phone call with my best friend in Arkansas this morning. He's been wanting to dabble into creating his own coffee brand, his own coffee shop. And I told him, like, bro, it's not what everyone thinks it is. I don't even know how to describe it, because I saved up a decent amount, not a lot, but enough that if I really needed to tap into the savings account, I would probably be able to float myself for a couple months. But not a long time. Like, it was give or take 3 or 4 months. But that's the thing that I think people don't understand, is that this is not like you said, this isn't I'm going to be able to sell the business in 3 years and makes X amount of dollars, whether it's got debt or not. Like, people are going to buy it and I'm going to walk away happy. And all I can say is that not knowing what I wanted to do for my whole life, and then finally finding something that I truly love and do want to do for the rest of my life, I think that kind of grounds me a little bit, because it's not a short game where I'm going to be flexing and posting Lamborghinis and doing all this other stuff. I'm happy with my day to day. I wake up and I love having moments to chat with you or to our other friends in the industry, like Shawn out in Australia, or Michael, or my business partner. I'm like, these people give me a sense of happiness, in the sense of there's no ask and there's no give. It's like, we're just here to support. We're just here to like finally do something that we're passionate about. And so for me, that like knowing my why keeps me really grounded, because it is not easy. I struggled with depression and suicide like all through high school and like early, like through my military time. Like, there was always those moments where I've always struggled with that. And entrepreneurship is not easy, especially in, like you said, the hospitality space, that you really have to, like, this isn't like, okay, I'll go back to the reference, like people for Airbnb, they're like, oh, I'm going to teach you how to make $1 million on Airbnb. Great. You can do it. It's possible. I've seen plenty of people who do, but it's not about, I'm going to be a millionaire off of Airbnb, because that's not how it is. It's you make $1 million in revenue. Sure. But are you a millionaire? No, you're not. And so selling that lifestyle versus, I'm going to show you how to build a real hospitality brand that can make millions of dollars as a business to give you a sustainable and profitable lifestyle that fits you and your core and what your mission is. Great. I love that. But it's not easy. I went months. I went from March of last year to, I think, December of 2020. No income, not a dime. Like, how do you prepare somebody for that? You can't. So yeah, like it's really hard. But I think, just like I said, and to answer your question, it really comes down to grounding yourself on the foundation of what your purpose is. And mine was just that I finally found something I love, and I'm not going to let anyone tell me that. Like my friend, when he said, "Oh, don't go work at the hotel, go work at the car wash." Like, I'm not gonna let anybody tell me, what makes me happy is something I shouldn't be doing. So I'm finally happy. I finally found something that I'm passionate about. And that's the reason why I get up every morning and I don't stop. I do what I need to do. I'm learning a ton. Like, it's not easy. I'm not saying I know everything about podcasting or about hospitality or lodging or tech or anything, but I know what I know. And I know that I know enough to keep me going, and it's a constant learning, like, battle. So yeah, that's kind of my long-winded answer for you.
So let's chat about COVID. Let's talk about the pandemic, because the pandemic basically decimated travel, decimated everything. But you've been formulating some really fantastic ideas and concepts, and we talked about it on your podcast about Destination Air, which I thought was a fantastic thing and something that I've always lived by, in the way of Clive's being a space that people come to see Victoria for. And I live in a very big tourist town. Like, cruise ships have been banned, and we usually do anywhere up to like 50, 60 cruise ships in a summer. Like, and all cruise ships have stopped. That's millions of people not coming through our city. Yeah. Now, luckily enough, the business that I try and build at Clive's is that it's locals first, tourists are my cream, tourists are my top up. And I hate to use the pivot word, but I'm going to use the pivot word. How in March, like, because I didn't see it coming. Like, I was in Vegas in February. And it was crazy because I did 2 podcasts while I was in Vegas in February. And by the time they came out, like the world just shut down. So I actually had to go back to my guests and do like a part 2 because like one friend of mine, we did the podcast in his brand new bar that had been open for like a year. They did a walkthrough, talked about everything, and then the lockdown happened, and I literally had to talk to him about his bar shutting down and possibly never reopening. And so you got part A and part B, and that was February 24th, I think. February 24th, and then March 7th. Like in 2 weeks, everything gone. How did you change up? Like, obviously you were just saying about depression and everything. How did you see the silver lining in it all?
It's a good question, and I tried to like reflect on it more now that we're kind of seeing the other side of it. But in the beginning, I really didn't know what to do. I was in London when the whole world shut down, and I got stuck in Iceland for about 24 hours. Thought I had COVID. I didn't, thank God. But then I got activated for the National Guard. So I was running all the test sites in Washington State. So I really had no choice. Like the podcast, like all my sponsors, my guests, everybody canceled and was just like, we don't know what to do. And like, rightfully so. They, the whole world stopped, like you said. But the National Guard kind of pulled me in and was like, hey, we got, like, you're activated. It's time to go. So we ran all the test sites. And during that time, it kept me busy. So that was nice. But then I realized that, like, I was already doing the podcast remotely. I was already doing all the stuff basically remotely. And the short-term rental segment of lodging and travel started to recover. Actually, it took a big hit because Airbnb and other platforms let 100% refunds, no questions asked type deal to any guest. So everyone took a big hit in the beginning, but slowly after the initial 2 weeks to flatten the curve, quarantine, all this types of stuff, people started realizing that this was a sector of lodging that was different from hotels because I can be with my family or my COVID pod and be away from everybody else. No shared elevators, no lobbies to wait for our keys, no nothing. And so that slowly started to really take off in recovery. And that helps because then all of our short-term rental, which oddly enough, my podcast started hotel, restaurant, and shifted heavily into vacation rentals ever since I started my own management company. And a lot of the sponsors were with vacation rental tech and all the other stuff. So to go back to your question, to see the pivot, I think I still feel like a lot of the people in the industry, especially on the hotel side, don't see the power of what Airbnb has really created with short-term rentals. And so I kind of just was like, how like Gary Vee said he saw it was going to be big before it was big. I kind of felt that was like, okay, this is going to be something that we really need to hone into. This wasn't just something that people are going to, use to offset their mortgage or whatever. It's going to become a real business model and a hospitality brand. And we just kept diving into that. And another big pivot was just really focusing on the destination area concept wasn't really a concept until I was like, we are seeing so many of the same companies, startups, whatever, on the headlines all over during COVID. But what about the people that are on the ground, busting their ass, providing the best service to this day, even with all these restrictions, new PPE, new requirements, all this new stuff that they have to do? They pretty much had to change their whole company in order to keep their livelihood. Why aren't we focusing on these people? And that destination air award and the destination air concept, which I can explain for the audience, is people that are wired to create remarkable experiences that are anticipated and shared. And that can be applied to restaurants, bars, hotels, vacation rentals, you name it. We want to talk about the people that are creating destinations. Once they get to Clive's, they have nowhere else they need to go. They have everything they need. And you use that and you track them to it. And then everything outside of Clive's is now an extra, because you've already provided the basic necessity of an experience that is just remarkable and outstanding. And that, why would they want to leave? But if they did, they could, and it's just add-ons. They already had a great experience, so why not start off on a great foot with Clive's or whatever business? And that became a real big understanding of what I wanted to focus on, was not just all these big, companies are doing the same thing and getting the same press and getting all the headline. was how can we find the people out there? And we did. We found 50 people around the world: South Africa, Australia, UK, Canada, North America, everywhere. And they were nominated by their peers, which was even the cooler part. They weren't nominating themselves. They were being nominated by people that when they heard that definition, they heard that word, they're like, Shawn, yep, that's him. Got to put him in. And that was the cool part, because then the community really came together. So I think there was no real pivot other than the overall industry really showing its colors on community.
I got a couple of things from this. Do you think the destinationaire style concept that you've sort of been working on for the last like 6-12 months, as travel starts coming back, do you think that people are not going to be traveling as much recreationally? Do you think that they're going to be very much more thinking about, okay, I'm going to take this one big trip this year with my family, we're still going to be wearing masks on airplanes, that sort of thing, to one location that has everything that I want? Like my wife and I were just looking at places in Mexico and stuff like that. Like, I don't want to go anywhere else. I don't want to have a layover somewhere. This is the one trip we're going to do this year, and that's it. Outside of business travel, but recreational travel, do you think that more people are going to be putting a lot more thought into where they're going to almost like just one location, so that it's not going to be backpacking around Europe anymore? It's going to be like, let's go to this town because it has XYZ. Do you think that's going to be more prolific in the macro? I understand there's still going to be a lot of people who travel like multiple times a year recreationally, but in the macro, I think a lot of people are going to be like, you know what? I don't want to be on a plane for 12 hours. Do you think that's going to be more prolific this year?
Yeah, and my prediction has been, I think obviously as international travel is starting to pick up a little bit, not a little bit. I think once it fully opens and people are going on these big trips to, let's say UK or anywhere else outside of their current country, I think one thing, like I can speak on this for at least the American side of things, is that this really helped people discover their backyard in a lot of ways. Like, people would always be saving up for these big trips, but then they realized with flexible living and flexible working with remote work, and either some businesses are going to hybrid models where it's like you're in the office for 2 days versus 5, or some that are just saying we're no office ever again. I think people are realizing they have this flexible living option versus like also flexible travel, where they don't have to save up penny after penny after penny and work 9 months, 10 months, 11 months just to get 2 weeks. They're going to realize they can spread that 2 week out throughout their whole year at a cheaper cost for most places. And they're going to be able to discover a lot new destinationaires in their own backyard, in the sense of like, I'm only like 3 hours away from Leavenworth. I never go, but during COVID is like, why not go like look at the reindeer farm and do all this other stuff that I've never done when it's been right there the whole damn time. So I think it's going to happen. Like, obviously international travel is going to pick up hugely once it actually fully opens, because there is still that pent up demand. But I feel like the consistent local business and the local travel, the good old American family road trip is going to be something that's going to continue and finally come back to that. Like, I remember 2018, 19, people were like, oh, support local, shop local, stay local, eat local, but nobody was doing it and businesses were really suffering. Now they're actually doing pretty good. And I feel like this is going to help that shift continue. So to answer your question, there's going to be a big pent-up demand, but I'm hoping that long-term it doesn't automatically go back to the way it was and diminish all that local travel. I think there's going to be a lot of hybrid workers and flexible living. So it's going to be a fun and new way, like, subscriptions, like we're seeing that happen. Subscription travel. Why pay $1,900 or $2,000 a month in California for rent when you can get a $3,000 travel subscription through one of your favorite brands that gives you loyalty perks and whatever, and stay in any of their destinations around the country for basically a little bit more, but with a better experience and a better off, lifestyle behind it.
Yeah, I think with the lockdown, the one thing that's shown is that those little weekend trips that we would have done back in the day that weren't special, they were just like a little, let's drive an hour and a half to such and such and check it out, is all of a sudden like, oh my God, we just drove an hour and a half. That was so fantastic. Get out of the house for like a day or two. And now every little bit of travel is special again. I'm curious because this is happening in the hospitality space. And I know that hotels versus Airbnb and short-term rentals have always been this sort of like they've always demonized like Airbnbs and for various reasons.
Yeah.
And in the hospitality, food and beverage space, 2 to 5 years ago, every main chef was like dogging ghost kitchens. Like you just article after article after article. Oh, San Francisco's getting decimated by ghost kitchens. Da da da. Now every chef and his dog. Like again, if you go to clubhouse rooms, every chef and his dog with the pandemic have a ghost kitchen and a delivery service. And you're like, come on, dude! Like I saw you quoted 2 years ago saying ghost kitchens were going to be the scourge of the food and beverage industry. Do you think that hotels are looking at short-term rentals and the Airbnb model a little bit closer than they used to because of that recovery time for short-term rentals? Are we gonna see like a hybridized crossover version where big hotel brands understand the short-term rental market a lot more and start cashing in on that?
Definitely, 100%. I can already guarantee that just by a couple of projects I'm already working on with a couple other companies. But for the longest time, hotels were saying Airbnb is bad. They're taking away our market share. And then Airbnb people like hosts, professional companies like myself or others that have hundreds, if not maybe thousands of properties that they manage, whether it's multifamily or single family units. We're saying we are professional. We set the same standard, if not higher, for our quality of property, for our quality of operations, or our quality of service to our guests. We deserve a seat at the table of hospitality. And then for the longest time, hotels were like, well, you're not paying the same taxes and permits and all this other stuff that we are. And it was like, yeah, but we're still generating a crap ton of revenue for the city and tourism as a whole. So leave us alone. We're professionals. Like that constant conversation was going back and forth. And now you have Marriott Home and Villas program. You have Accor with One Fine Stay. They're all getting into the sector because recovery was amazing. The overall standard of professionalized operations is there. It's not a air mattress on someone's living room floor or that spare bedroom like Brian Chesky created it to be in the beginning, like a couch surfing thing. It's a real professional, and it gives people like myself who maybe can't buy a hotel or open a hotel at 26 years old, but then I can actually get into the short-term rental area, earn a good amount of income where I can actually think about getting into it's like a lower level tier to get you ready for that big step. And so I think Airbnb has opened up a ton of options for everybody. And we're going to see hotels picking up on it. When I was even a hotel manager, we listed on Airbnb. Like it became a good revenue source because guests are paying a cleaning fee. The taxes and credit card processing fees covered through Airbnb. They're doing all that stuff for the city and the state and all that. So why not, right? And so it just became a better model. And I think, it's going to be here to stay. A lot of people are starting to see it, and hotels are even going to shift their, let's say, their depressed inventory that's not being used. Hasn't been given a little bit of love in a while, and they're going to give it some love. And I guarantee they're going to be putting it on platforms like Airbnb and having that short-term rental styled accommodation come back versus their regular hotel room that's a little square box of 200 square feet and a small little mini fridge that's never cold and all that type of stuff.
They never are. Never are.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's the same argument that we have in the food and beverage sector of like restaurants versus food trucks. And I'm like, yeah, but and they're like, oh, they make so much more money than us. I'm like, if you're looking at percentages, possibly, but 10% of maybe $10,000 a week in sales is not the same as you doing $150,000 or $200,000 in sales and making 5%. Like that, it's a sliding scale. It doesn't work on the same level. Yeah. I'm curious from a hotel point of view. This has always been one of my big arguments because being in the food and beverage sector, working with tourism bodies and sort of seeing how tourism bodies sort of view the whole hospitality ecosystem. It's always hotels. And even I think we talked about on your podcast about tourism bodies not having a food and beverage representative, but having 3 representatives for 3 different size hotels. Do you think hotels have woken up to the fact that they're not the center of the ecosystem when it comes to tourism in their city? Because usually what they would see is like, I'm in the middle. and then the pedicab operator and the restaurant and the buses that bring people from the cruise ships and everything
Yeah.
else rotates around me. Do you think that hotels have gone, we're actually just a spider's web of everything connected, and there's no nucleus. Everything's just connected and everything feeds into ourselves. Do you think there's been a lot of wake-up calls when it comes to hotels and the overall ecosystem that is tourism?
I hope so. I really do. That's like my business partner Adam and I have kind of like had a couple conversations around this, and it was always about how hotels failed to see the first 5 feet around them, right? They would always think about the international traveler and the guests that are coming from the cruise ships or whatever. They always thought about the outside versus the inside, which is why I loved what you said about Clive's, about how you're a locals first business, and then everything, the cream on the top is your tourism. I think hotels, I'm really hoping, start to realize how, short-term rentals are. Like with us, I'm a vacation rental manager. I don't have a restaurant in my house. I don't have a restaurant or a bar at my glam site. I just don't. But I have the best relationships with all the best ones in that city, in that destination, where I can create amazing packages and experiences or coupons or some way to form a relationship that says, we have a mutual person who's one staying at our place, but they need to eat and they like to drink and they need all this stuff. I can be able to do that. I'm hoping hotels start to see that as a plus as well. Obviously, it's going to be great to have the revenue in-house with their own bar and their own restaurant, but having the other specialty businesses in their area promoted as a kind of like that web that you're talking about, I'm really hoping that becomes something that they start to focus on more with that 5 feet, 10 feet, 15, 20 foot range within their city, because it's not just about the hotel. It's about the overall experience destination you can create out of all the best of the best in that community, in that destination as a whole. It's like why when we say on the destination air concept, we're always talking about how to create a destination. So like you can create a cool destination with a castle or mansion, but can you create other things can you create other experiences and moments with the others around you? If I book a hotel, what is my experience going to be other than a bed, a shower, and, a decent night's sleep? Like, what are you going to add on to it? And I'm hoping that's what hotels see. And I think we will. I think we'll hopefully see that the food and beverage and the overall just industry as hospitality instead of lodging, restaurant, bar, food. I'm hoping we start to see it as a bundle instead of a separate ecosystem.
So let's talk about, I don't want to keep you too much longer. Let's talk about the next 6 to 12 months personally and business-wise. What's the plan for you personally for the next 6 to 12 months? What's your goals and aspirations?
Oh, man. Well, so for 3 years, I've been doing all of the editing, copywriting, graphic design, all that stuff. I finally have a team to do that for me on my podcast. So I'm going through a lot of growing pains on that. But with our management company right now, since that we're starting over from square one after my previous one, it's just now getting inventory and creating systems and building that brand and building that culture with our staff, creating a business that is sustainable in the sense of profitability, but then also culturally, where our cleaners and maintenance people aren't making $13 an hour; they're making $25. They're making a more sustainable wage in order to give kind of like bridge that gap is a big personal goal of mine. Just I feel like they are the backbone of the industry. I can create a brand and a vision and all this other stuff and tell this amazing story that makes people want to flock and stay at my destinations, but I have nobody to help clean or do the maintenance or any of the upkeep or any of the safety inspections. Guess what? I don't have a product that's worth selling and doing all this stuff. So for the next 12 to 6 months, is continue to grow the show and find more creative ways to create new concepts. We're going to be doing lots of collaborations and new like mini series and whatnot. So I'm really excited about that. Finally getting the opportunity to not have to be the man behind the keyboard doing all the editing. And then for the management company, it's just getting inventory, scaling a really a experiential brand is what we're calling it. We don't want to we want to get to 150 units as soon as possible and just scale. We really want to focus on, that's why my title of destination director is, we're going to provide, inventory and have all the stuff under our brand, but we really want it to be something worth creating partnerships with local bars and restaurants and all this other stuff to create a destination. So right now that's kind of our big goal, and we're slowly but surely going through it. And we're, as you know, it's not overnight. It takes time, but we're glad to see at least some progress be made and continuing to grow every day. It's been cool, like to just get that one email or to get that, one hit on your website that turns into a conversation with somebody else or whatever. And so it's just a little stuff that adds up, and we're excited to see it.
So industry forecast for the next 6 to 12 months, what do you see? I know that you're a big proponent of, obviously we talked about destination all the way through this. I know that, what's it called? Revenge travel has been a big talking point for you. Where do you see the next 6 to 12 months? Because I think the US is a very different ecosystem than a lot of other places in the world right now. Yeah. What's your forecast for the next 6 to 12 months for the industry?
It's hard to say because it's all by location sometimes, like Canada is a completely different story than America right now. And so my hope that with the vaccine rollout and with people starting to get comfortable with not just short-term rental stays, but going back into a hotel and experiencing that, the original hospitality feel that we've all had and loved, and like the reason why we're in the industry. I can say that, like you said, I think we were talking off backstage, was that masks, I think, are going to be here to stay. So finding, I think that's going to be, vaccinated or not, something that's going to continue. We're still going to have to be conscious about on, how we smile with our eyes and body language and other stuff like that. But 6 to 12 months, I'm hoping that we're almost at pre-COVID levels. I want to see everyone thriving. And my big concern is staffing right now. So finding good staff, a lot of people left the industry due to the way furloughs and layoffs and all that other stuff happened. So I'm a little concerned for that, but maybe this is the time that hotels, restaurants, short-term rental companies really start to look at the younger generation of people that have good knowledge and drive. They just need a little bit of guidance and mentorship. That's one thing that's always been lacking. But I've been blessed to say, I've had a couple mentors in my life that have come in at certain points and stages that really help guide. And I think we just need to start focusing in on that a little bit. And so 6 to 12 months, I'm hoping we see a new generation of hospitality experts rise up and replace you and I on the microphone and give us the time to go to do all these big conferences and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I'm hoping we get back to pre-COVID levels within that. I'm pretty positive we will. So that's one
last thought for everybody who's looking at being an entrepreneur in the hospitality space. One last thought, one piece of advice for anyone who's listening to you, or they rarely, like a 20-year-old kid rarely looks at me. I'm a 40-year-old dude. They're like, you've been doing this for as long as I've been alive. So, but as the younger generation in the industry, what's the one piece of advice for anyone who wants to become a hospitality entrepreneur?
Consistency is key, and treat everybody like, I don't care if they're the biggest CEO of the biggest company or if they're a brand new startup. Treat everyone with respect and try to bring value in everywhere you can, because at the end of the day, that's something that people don't get as often. So be consistent, bring value when you can. If you can't, say, I want to learn, be open about it. And I guarantee you'll be well off compared to a lot of us that maybe didn't get that opportunity in the beginning. So
100%. Yeah. Well, man, it's always good to catch up with you. I think we could have probably talked for another hour. Like as soon as you started mentioning staffing, I was like, oh, this could be another tangent. Yeah, this could be a completely different tangent. But I want to thank you for your time, man. It's always cool to hang out and catch up. I do thoroughly enjoy catching up and hanging out and chatting about the industry. And it's a different perspective. I dabble in the hotel sector, but it's definitely a different perspective for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I'm a little rusty. Like let's be honest, I haven't been in a hotel for a while, other than for staying. I haven't been operating one, so it's cool to see the hybrid model. I think we're the overall ecosystem, like we've been talking about, is really joining together versus separating. So I'm hoping that continues. And thank you for letting me be on the show. It's been a blast, and I love our little chats and Clubhouse and WhatsApp and all this. This is super cool. Thank you.
Well, thanks, buddy. Have a good day. I'll chat to you real soon.
Well. All right.
See you, buddy.